A glass shattered. A marriage collapsed. And the gossip columns roared. Yet she smiled, as if scandal were her crown. From stolen husbands to dangerous midnight affairs, these women didn't just play divas on screen, they lived it. With beauty as their weapon and desire as their stage, 18 stars bent the most powerful men to their will, proving that in old Hollywood, seduction was its own empire. Number 1. Elizabeth Taylor, the violet-eyed temptress who stole love at any cost. The cameras adored her. Those violet eyes, impossibly luminous, could seduce an audience in a single close-up. But off-screen, Elizabeth Taylor's greatest performances played out in the shadows of bedrooms and behind studio gates. Her beauty was magnetic, and in Hollywood's gossip-fueled ecosystem, every glance, every whispered affair became part of her legend. The most infamous betrayal came in 1958, when Taylor shattered one of Hollywood's most beloved friendships. Her third husband, producer Mike Todd, had been killed in a plane crash. As she mourned, she found comfort in the arms of singer Eddie Fisher, who, at the time, was married to Taylor's close friend, Debbie Reynolds. It was a scandal that rocked America. Tabloids painted Taylor as the shameless homewrecker who had stolen a husband from America's sweetheart. Fisher left Reynolds and married Taylor, but the marriage quickly curdled, consumed by bitterness and regret. Taylor would later apologize to Reynolds, but the betrayal remained etched in Hollywood memory. That drama was only the beginning. Elizabeth would marry 8 times, forever chasing and fleeing passion. Her torrid, volcanic relationship with Richard Burton defined her middle years. They married, divorced, then married again, their fights and reconciliations becoming international news. Their love was intoxicating, but it was also destructive, laced with jealousy, alcohol, and the relentless pressure of 2 megastars locked in orbit. Taylor's private life was never private. Studios feared her scandals, but they also fed her fame. Each new marriage, hotelier Conrad Hilton, actor Michael Wilding, Senator John Warner, and even a construction worker named Larry Fortensky, kept her in headlines as much as any Oscar win. She was at once Hollywood royalty and tabloid obsession, a woman who refused to be tamed by convention or morality. Through it all, Taylor remained unapologetic. The problem with people who have no vices, she once quipped, is that generally you can be pretty sure they're going to have some pretty annoying virtues. Hollywood crowned her its queen, but it was scandal, not cinema, that cemented her throne. Number 2. Vivien Leigh, the actress who loved until it destroyed her. She was immortalized as Scarlett O'Hara, the fiery Southern belle who survived war and heartbreak. But Vivien Leigh's greatest drama unfolded not on the screen. It was in her relentless pursuit of love, and the destruction it left in its wake. From the moment she laid eyes on Laurence Olivier, Leigh decided he would be hers. At the time, she was already married, and so was Olivier. His wife, actress Jill Esmond, was pregnant, but that mattered little to Vivien. On the sun-drenched cliffs of Capri, the two embarked on a clandestine affair that burned hotter than any studio romance. Leigh discarded her marriage with cold efficiency, and Olivier abandoned his family. By 1940, they were wed, and Hollywood declared them its golden couple. Yet passion came at a price. Leigh's beauty and talent dazzled, but beneath the glamour lay fragility. She battled violent mood swings, later diagnosed as bipolar disorder, and her obsessive devotion to Olivier bordered on possession. Rumors spread of affairs, hers and his, each one a dagger that deepened their mutual wounds. On set, she was radiant. Off set, she unraveled. Friends whispered of explosive fights, public humiliations, and private despair. Her career mirrored her personal life. Meteoric highs followed by brutal collapses. She won acclaim for A Streetcar Named Desire in 1951. Yet her fragile health, both physical and mental, began to sabotage her work. Tuberculosis shadowed her for years. The same woman who had captivated the world as Scarlett and Blanche now found herself unable to hold scripts or trust her own mind. By the 1960s, her marriage to Olivier lay in ruins. He sought solace elsewhere, and she drifted into a haze of failed romances, manic episodes, and lingering illness. In 1967, at only 53, Vivien Leigh collapsed at home in London, her body surrendering to the tuberculosis she had long fought. Number 3. Joan Crawford, the ambitious seductress who turned lovers into ladders. She began as Lucille LeSueur, a poor Texas girl who scrubbed laundry in boarding houses, but Hollywood remade her into Joan Crawford, the ultimate rags-to-riches story. Behind her dazzling smile and wide, hungry eyes was an ambition that knew no limits. And in the ruthless studio system, Crawford discovered that passion and power often slept in the same bed. From the 1920s onward, Joan mastered the art of seduction not only for pleasure, but as survival. She was linked to Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Clark Gable, and Spencer Tracy, men who could elevate her standing in the industry. Gossip columnists whispered that Crawford never missed a chance to turn romance into opportunity. It was said she climbed MGM's ladder, not just with talent, but with a willingness to entangle herself with the very men who could shape her career. Yet ambition came at a cost. Beneath the designer gowns and glittering premieres was a woman terrified of slipping back into poverty. She worked endlessly, remaking her image from flapper to ingenue to melodrama queen. But her appetite for success often overshadowed her search for love. Her marriages to Fairbanks Jr., actor Franchot Tone, actor Philip Terry, and later Pepsi-Cola executive Alfred Steele were riddled with affairs, jealous fights, and betrayals that mirrored the roles she played on screen. As the decades passed, Crawford's star dimmed. The arrival of younger actresses left her scrambling to stay relevant. She fought back fiercely, reinventing herself in chilling roles like Mildred Pierce, which won her an Academy Award. Still, the gossip lingered. Her name was forever tied to stories of affairs with co-stars, producers, and studio moguls. The cruelest blow came not from Hollywood, but from within her own home. In 1978, her adopted daughter Christina published Mommy Dearest, a scathing memoir that painted Crawford as an abusive, manipulative alcoholic. The book tarnished her legacy, turning her once golden ambition into a cautionary tale of greed, cruelty, and desperation. Number 4. Ava Gardner, the goddess who couldn't be tamed. She was called the most beautiful animal in the world. Dark hair, smoldering eyes, and a sensual presence that hypnotized men before she even spoke. Ava Gardner was not just a movie star, she was a force of nature, a woman whose passions refused to be bound by Hollywood's rules or society's expectations. Her introduction to scandal came early. In 1942, at just 19, Ava married actor Mickey Rooney, who at the time was one of the most famous men in America. But the union was a disaster. Rooney bragged about their wild nights, while Gardner dismissed him coldly, later confessing he had been selfish in every sense. The marriage collapsed within a year, leaving Ava determined never to be tamed. She next fell for bandleader Artie Shaw, and then found herself drawn into the orbit of eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes. Their relationship was tempestuous, filled with gifts, jealousy, and Hughes's obsessive control. But Gardner was no one's possession. She broke away, leaving Hughes humiliated and desperate to win her back. Her most famous love, however, was Frank Sinatra. Their affair ignited in the early 1950s when Sinatra was still married to Nancy. Hollywood was scandalized as the crooner left his wife for the goddess he could never fully hold. Their marriage in 1951 was volcanic. Endless fights, passionate reconciliations, and a love so destructive it nearly destroyed them both. "We were great in bed," Ava later admitted, "but terrible in everything else." They divorced after 6 years. but Sinatra never stopped longing for her. Gardner's conquests didn't end there. She was rumored to have had an affair with writer Ernest Hemingway in Cuba, their nights soaked in rum and laughter. She attracted bullfighters in Spain, aristocrats in Europe, and fellow actors across the globe. Wherever she went, Ava left broken hearts and scandalized headlines in her wake. By the 1970s, her beauty had been weathered by alcohol, heartbreak, and exhaustion. Yet even in decline, she radiated the same untamed spirit. Ava Gardner lived without apology, a goddess who demanded everything from life and refused to let any man or any studio chain her. Number 5. Marilyn Monroe, the blonde bombshell who loved dangerous men. She was more than a movie star, she was an American myth. Marilyn Monroe, with her breathy voice and dazzling smile, became the ultimate symbol of desire. But behind the carefully crafted image of innocence and seduction lay a woman who loved recklessly, often choosing men who could both thrill and destroy her. Her first great love was baseball legend Joe DiMaggio. In 1954, their union was hailed as the perfect marriage of sports and Hollywood glamour. But the cracks appeared almost immediately. DiMaggio's traditional values clashed with Marilyn's rising stardom. He bristled at her iconic subway great scene in The 7-Year Itch, watching as cameras and crowds gawked at his wife. Their marriage lasted just 9 months. Yet, despite the bitterness, DiMaggio remained loyal to her for the rest of his life, quietly arranging roses at her grave until his own death. Next came playwright Arthur Miller, the intellectual who seemed to offer stability. But Marilyn's demons followed her into the marriage. The studios demanded she remain the bubbly blonde, while she longed for respect as a serious actress. Miller's disappointment grew as her addictions and insecurities deepened. Their love story, filled with lofty ideals and crushing disillusionment, unraveled in divorce. And then came the most dangerous entanglement of all, John F. Kennedy. Rumors swirled of late-night phone calls, clandestine meetings, and a love affair between the president and the world's most famous blonde. The whispers grew louder after her sultry, "Happy birthday, Mr. President" performance in 1962, a moment so charged with innuendo that it became iconic overnight. But what had once seemed glamorous turned toxic. Kennedy, wary of scandal, distanced himself. For Marilyn, the rejection was devastating. The studio system kept her trapped in a gilded cage, a sex symbol rather than a woman of depth. Addictions to pills and alcohol blurred the line between performance and reality. In August 1962, she was found lifeless at just 36. Her death officially ruled a probable suicide. Yet the rumors of political cover-ups and dangerous secrets never ceased. Number 6. Rita Hayworth, the love goddess who was always betrayed. When Rita Hayworth danced across the screen in Gilda, hair tossed back, eyes smoldering, voice dripping with suggestion, America crowned her the love goddess. She was the fantasy of millions, the ultimate femme fatale. Yet off-screen, Rita was no seductress. She was shy, soft-spoken, and yearning for stability. Hollywood built her into a sex symbol, and in doing so, it condemned her to a lifetime of betrayal. Her personal life was a carousel of broken promises. She married 5 times, each husband promising love, protection, or escape, and each leaving her shattered. Her first marriage, to Edward Judson, was poisoned by control and exploitation. He used her beauty to push her career forward, treating her as a commodity rather than a wife. By the time she broke free, the damage was already done. Rita had learned that love often came with a price tag. Her second marriage, to director Orson Welles, seemed at first like a union of art and glamour. Welles adored her beauty, but he was also consumed by his own genius and infidelities. Their fights were legendary, their passion volcanic, but the affair burned out quickly. Rita admitted later she had never truly been happy with him, despite the romance the press adored. Then came Prince Ali Khan, a jet-setting playboy who whisked her into a fairy tale wedding. Hollywood gasped as Rita became a real-life princess, but the fairy tale quickly crumbled into jealousy and betrayal. By 1953, they divorced, leaving Rita to raise their daughter, Yasmin, largely alone. Behind the headlines, Hayworth battled alcoholism, which she used to numb the loneliness and the pressure of her public image. The studios had typecast her as the eternal temptress, but in reality, she longed for ordinary affection, something she never seemed able to hold. By the 1970s, her radiant beauty faded under the weight of personal demons, and the early onset of Alzheimer's disease tragically stole her memory. Rita Hayworth remains immortal on film, forever seductive and untouchable. Yet her story is a haunting irony. The woman America worshipped as the love goddess was, in truth, the one who was always betrayed. Number 7. Clara Bow, the it girl who loved too many. Before Marilyn Monroe or Elizabeth Taylor, there was Clara Bow, the original it girl. In the roaring 1920s, her red hair, wide smile, and uninhibited energy made her the symbol of jazz-age Hollywood. On screen, she embodied the flapper, free-spirited, bold, and irresistible. Off-screen, her real life blurred so completely with that image that she became the target of scandals too wild for even the gossip columns. Clara's rise was meteoric. By 1927, she was starring in It, the film that coined her nickname. Audiences adored her playful sexuality and natural charm, but her private romances fueled just as many headlines as her films. She moved quickly from lover to lover, treating each new fling like a whirlwind engagement. She was briefly linked to matinee idol Gary Cooper, director Victor Fleming, and countless others who basked in her aura of rebellion. To Clara, romance was a game of passion, and Hollywood never stopped watching. The rumors, however, were vicious. One of the most infamous claimed she had slept with the entire USC football team, a charge that was never proven, but spread like wildfire. Though baseless, the story stained her reputation and was used by studios and rivals to paint her as reckless and immoral. Other whispers accused her of affairs with married men, of being uncontrollable at parties, and of breaking more hearts than anyone in Hollywood's golden youth. But beneath the glitter was fragility. Clara had grown up in poverty and abuse, carrying scars that no amount of fame could erase. The fast life of jazz-age Hollywood only deepened her instability. She struggled with mental health, exhaustion, and betrayal from those who profited off her name. By 1931, at just 28, Clara retired from the screen, a flame extinguished long before her time. Her legacy, however, endured. Clara Bow embodied the intoxicating mix of desire and scandal that defined the Roaring Twenties. She was the girl everyone wanted, the star everyone talked about, and the woman Hollywood both adored and destroyed. The it girl had too much of everything: fame, beauty, passion, and, in the end, too many lovers for a world that demanded women hide their desires. Number 8. Tallulah Bankhead, the woman who desired everyone. She didn't just walk into a room, she exploded into it. Cigarette dangling, voice husky, wit razor sharp. Tallulah Bankhead was unlike any other star of her generation. On screen she was daring, but off screen she was scandal incarnate. Proudly bisexual in an era of suffocating morality, a woman who pursued pleasure with such abandon that Hollywood could only whisper her name in awe and fear. Tallulah grew up in Alabama, but her southern roots never tamed her. By the time she arrived in Hollywood in the 1930s, she was already infamous for her wild lifestyle. Her beauty was magnetic, her voice seductively throaty, and her appetite for love insatiable. She bragged about her conquests with gleeful honesty, once quipping, "My father warned me about men and alcohol, but he never mentioned women and cocaine." The gossip was staggering. Bankhead claimed to have had affairs with more than 500 people, men, women, and anyone who caught her eye. Among her rumored lovers were actresses Greta Garbo, Hattie McDaniel, and Marlene Dietrich, as well as countless male co-stars and powerful studio figures. Unlike many of her peers who hid their true selves behind carefully polished studio facades, Tallulah reveled in her reputation. She was both a siren and a scandal, leaning into the persona others feared. Yet, behind the laughter and the shock value, she wielded charm like a weapon. Tallulah's dinner parties were legendary, filled with sharp banter, outrageous behavior, and endless seduction. She was bold enough to defy the Hays Code censors with her innuendo, yet clever enough to stay in the spotlight without ever fully being silenced. Still, her excesses carried consequences. Alcohol, drugs, and relentless partying eroded her health. By middle age, her beauty had faded. Her voice was ravaged, and her career never fully recovered from years of notoriety. But she never stopped shocking, never stopped laughing, and never stopped desiring. Number 9. Marlene Dietrich, the seductress who defied every boundary. Before Hollywood even knew her name, Marlene Dietrich was already scandalizing Berlin. In the smoky cabarets of the 1920s, she performed in top hats and tuxedos, crooning love songs to women as well as men. Her androgynous allure made her both dangerous and irresistible. By the time she crossed the Atlantic, Dietrich was not just an actress, she was a living provocation. Her breakthrough came with The Blue Angel in 1930, where she played the cabaret temptress Lola Lola. Clad in stockings and top hat, she became the embodiment of sexual rebellion. Hollywood rushed to claim her, and Paramount marketed her as the exotic European who made sin look glamorous. But Marlene brought more than just image. She brought her appetite. Dietrich's lovers spanned both genders, and she made little effort to hide it. She was linked to Douglas Fairbanks Jr., John Wayne, and Jean Gabin. At the same time, whispers swirled of passionate affairs with Greta Garbo, Mercedes D'Acosta, and even Tallulah Bankhead. She seemed to defy the strict codes of morality that governed Hollywood, moving effortlessly between men and women with a self-assuredness that left others stunned. Her scandal was not just in who she loved, but in how she presented herself. At a time when women were confined to gowns and pearls, Dietrich appeared in men's suits, her angular beauty accentuated rather than diminished. When warned not to wear trousers in public, she famously retorted that she would do so and make the world love her for it. She was right, but her fearless image came at a price. The studio system never fully trusted her, and conservative America often bristled at her defiance. Yet she remained untouchable, a star who turned transgression into art. Even in wartime, she courted controversy by entertaining Allied troops and denouncing the Nazis, solidifying her reputation as both a seductress and a rebel. Marlene Dietrich blurred every boundary. Gender, sexuality, morality, she was proof that scandal could be the most seductive weapon of all. Number 10. Lupe Vélez, the Mexican Spitfire whose passions consumed her. They called her the Mexican Spitfire, a nickname that captured both her fiery screen presence and her tempestuous private life. Lupe Vélez was magnetic, a woman of volcanic charm and uncontrollable passions. In the 1930s and 40s, she carved a place for herself in Hollywood as one of the first successful Mexican-born actresses. But while audiences adored her vivacity, behind the glamour was a woman whose loves burned too brightly and too violently. Lupe's affairs were the stuff of Hollywood legend. She was linked to Clark Gable, Charlie Chaplin, and Errol Flynn, men as reckless in their desires as she was. For a time, she was deeply attached to Gary Cooper, but her jealousy was fierce. When she discovered Cooper's wandering eye, she reportedly threatened him with a knife in a fit of rage. Studio bosses whispered that Lupe's temper was as dangerous as her allure, and no man who entered her orbit escaped unscathed. Her relationships weren't just scandalous, they were destructive. Vélez had a reputation for dramatic confrontations, fueled by an explosive mix of love, insecurity, and pride. She demanded total devotion from her partners, and when she didn't get it, her fury could shake the walls. Hollywood gossip columns feasted on her meltdowns, branding her both irresistible and untamable. But beneath the fire was fragility. By the mid-1930s, her career had begun to wane. Studios typecast her into exotic caricatures, never giving her the serious roles she craved. Off-screen, her romances grew darker, and whispers of pregnancy with a married man circulated. As rumors mounted, her laughter grew more forced, her nights more restless. In December 1944, at just 36 years old, Lupe Vélez's story ended in tragedy. She was found in her Beverly Hills home, having taken a fatal dose of sleeping pills. Hollywood painted it as a melodramatic finale, the fiery star who lived and died with the same intensity. Number 11. Jean Tierney, the Forrest Gump of affairs. She was called one of the most beautiful women ever to appear on screen. With her luminous green eyes and aristocratic elegance, Jean Tierney was the perfect embodiment of Hollywood glamour in the 1940s. Yet behind the flawless exterior was a woman whose personal life spun into chaos, a string of high-profile affairs that left her both adored and abandoned, her inner instability hidden beneath the glow of stardom. Tierney's romantic entanglements read like a roll call of America's elite. She was linked to Howard Hughes, the eccentric billionaire whose wealth and power could have secured her forever. But Hughes, notorious for his controlling obsessions, was too suffocating even for Jean. Their romance fizzled, leaving behind only whispers of what might have been. Next came Tyrone Power, the matinee idol with dark, brooding looks. Their affair captivated Hollywood insiders. A golden couple on the surface, but fraught with insecurity beneath. Power's inability to commit, and Tierney's desperate longing for stability doomed them from the start. When he left for military service during World War II, the relationship unraveled, leaving Jean shaken and alone. Her most infamous connection, however, was with John F. Kennedy. Long before he became president, Kennedy was a rising political star, and Jean was entranced by his charm. They carried on a clandestine relationship, but Kennedy, Catholic and ambitious, made it clear he could never marry a divorcee. For Tierney, the rejection was devastating. Another chapter in her series of loves that never lasted. Behind the glamorous facade, Jean struggled with emotional instability. She battled severe depression and was eventually diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a condition poorly understood at the time. In the 1950s, her breakdowns became so severe that she spent time in psychiatric hospitals, undergoing treatments that left her scarred but still fighting. Despite the turbulence, Tierney remained a haunting screen presence in films like Laura and Leave Her to Heaven. But Hollywood never saw the torment that accompanied her beauty. Jean Tierney's life was one of glittering highs and crushing lows, a woman whose heart was pulled into the orbits of powerful men, yet who could never find the lasting love she so desperately craved. Number 12. Jayne Mansfield, the blonde bombshell who flirted with darkness. If Marilyn Monroe was the untouchable goddess, Jayne Mansfield was her wild, rebellious twin. With platinum hair, a breathy voice, and a figure that defied logic, Mansfield burst onto the Hollywood scene in the 1950s as the studio's answer to Monroe. But where Marilyn cultivated mystery, Jayne craved shock value. She courted scandal with open arms and paid for it with a tragic, unforgettable finale. Her career was built on excess. Mansfield's film roles emphasized her curves, her breathy laugh, and her knack for teasing the censors. But behind the screen persona was a woman who treated life as one long party. She was notorious for her affairs and open flirtations, seducing men from actors to producers, leaving gossip columnists scrambling to keep up. She threw herself into wild parties where champagne flowed, morals blurred, and Hollywood's whispers grew deafening. One of the most bizarre chapters of her story was her association with Anton LaVey, founder of the Church of Satan. Whether it was a publicity stunt or a genuine fascination, Jayne relished the rumors. LaVey claimed they conducted rituals together, and Mansfield's defiant embrace of his dark image only deepened her reputation as Hollywood's most scandalous blonde. Yet Mansfield also knew how to use her sexuality for maximum impact. In 1957, during a dinner in Beverly Hills, she deliberately leaned forward in a low-cut dress, creating the famous photo where Italian star Sophia Loren is caught glaring at Jayne's overflowing cleavage. The image became legendary, a single shot that cemented Mansfield as both a bombshell and a provocateur. But her hunger for spectacle masked private struggles. Her career faltered as audiences tired of her antics and personal chaos. 3 marriages, countless affairs, and battles over custody of her children left her vulnerable. The end came violently. In 1967, at just 34 years old, Mansfield was killed in a horrific car crash in Louisiana. The shocking accident, with her children asleep in the back seat, became one of Hollywood's most macabre legends. Number 13. Grace Kelly, the princess who played with fire before the crown. To the world, Grace Kelly was the embodiment of elegance, a blonde goddess draped in pearls and couture, who traded Hollywood for royalty when she became Princess of Monaco. But before she walked down a palace aisle, Grace was known for something far less regal: her irresistible appetite for forbidden romances, especially with older, married men. Her film career was brief, only 11 movies. Yet in that short span, she became both a star and a scandal. On the set of High Noon, 1952, the 22-year-old ingenue reportedly began an affair with co-star Gary Cooper, who was decades older and married. The whispers shocked even Hollywood insiders, but the scandal didn't slow her ascent. Grace's serene beauty and Ice Queen demeanor gave her the aura of untouchable purity, even as she entangled herself in passionate affairs behind the scenes. She repeated the pattern with Mogambo, 1953, filmed in Africa with Clark Gable and Ava Gardner. Rumors swirled that Kelly and Gable were lovers during production, their on-screen chemistry mirroring an off-screen affair. Later, she was linked to Bing Crosby, Marlon Brando, and even fashion designer Oleg Cassini. Each fling added to her reputation as a woman who played with fire while maintaining the perfect public mask. Kelly's allure was her duality, the cool, pristine image of Hitchcock's icy blonde, paired with private behavior that defied the expectations of her era. She was the society girl who sneaked into hotel rooms, the Catholic daughter who chased dangerous love affairs. Even Prince Rainier, the man who would make her royalty, was not her first brush with powerful men, just the one who offered permanence. When she married Rainier in 1956, Grace seemed to transform into the perfect princess. Yet even after her coronation, rumors of affairs never ceased. Hollywood's memory of her was not just the regal bride, but the young actress who had risked everything in her search for passion. Number 14. Greta Garbo, the elusive star who loved in shadows. She spoke little, but her silence made her immortal. Greta Garbo was Hollywood's most mysterious goddess, a woman whose aloof beauty captivated millions. "I want to be alone," she famously declared. But that was only half the truth. Alone in public, perhaps. In private, Garbo's passions burned in shadows, whispered about, but rarely confirmed. Her love life became one of the great mysteries of Hollywood's golden age. Rumors swirled endlessly. She had romances with actors, athletes, aristocrats, and women whose names were only dared spoken in private. One story linked her to Josephine Baker, the flamboyant Parisian star who was every bit as fearless as Garbo was guarded. Another told of nights with Olympic swimmer turned Tarzan star Johnny Weissmuller. Still others claimed Greta shared secret romances with writer Mercedes de Acosta, and even fellow screen sirens like Louise Brooks. Garbo never confirmed any of it. She mastered the art of letting gossip thrive without ever being pinned down. That silence gave her power. While other actresses were destroyed by scandal, Garbo became even more untouchable. She let the rumors swirl: bisexuality, affairs with married men, shadowy meetings in European hotels, and transformed them into myth. Hollywood tried to own her, but she resisted. Studio bosses demanded publicity stunts. Garbo refused. They begged her to marry for the cameras. She declined. While her contemporaries lived out their scandals in newspapers, Garbo slipped away into shadows, choosing mystery over exposure. She kept lovers guessing, reporters chasing, and audiences craving more. By the early 1940s, at the height of her fame, she vanished from the screen altogether. Garbo spent the rest of her life in New York, walking the city streets like a ghost of old Hollywood. Her reclusiveness only deepened her legend. The woman who turned down 1,000 interviews, who would not explain herself, who kept her secrets until the grave. Number 15. Barbara LaMarr, the girl who was too beautiful to live. In the silent era, Barbara LaMarr was known as the girl who is too beautiful. But as Hollywood soon discovered, beauty that burns too brightly rarely lasts. With dark eyes, exotic features, and a reckless hunger for life, LaMarr became one of the screen's most talked-about stars of the 1920s. Yet behind the glamour was a whirlwind of marriages, scandal, and addictions that ended in tragedy before she reached 30. Barbara's personal life was a carousel of lovers and husbands. She married 5 times, each union collapsing in jealousy, infidelity, or despair. To Hollywood insiders, her vows seemed less like promises and more like brief intermissions between affairs. In nightclubs and speakeasies, she danced until dawn, her beauty drawing powerful men like moths to a flame. For a time, she seemed invincible, a woman who could reinvent herself through charm, seduction, and sheer force of will. But the fast life carried a darker cost. LaMarr became a fixture of Los Angeles nightlife, known for drinking, partying, and pushing herself to extremes. Rumors swirled of drug use, whispered in the same breath as her tangled romances. Friends worried that she rarely slept more than 2 hours a night, as if she feared closing her eyes would make her miss the next thrill. On screen, Barbara dazzled in films like The Three Musketeers, 1921, carving out a niche as the vamp who could break any man. Off-screen, her body was breaking down. Years of exhaustion, substance abuse, and relentless living caught up with her. By 1925, she collapsed under the weight of it all. Tuberculosis compounded her failing health, and Hollywood's too beautiful star withered away. She died in 1926 at only 29 years old, leaving behind a son who was later adopted by friends in the industry. Her funeral drew thousands, a morbid testament to how deeply her scandal and beauty had captivated the public. Number 16. Jean Harlow, the platinum blonde with deadly secrets. She was Hollywood's first platinum blonde, a shimmering goddess whose peroxide hair set the standard for an entire generation of starlets. Jean Harlow embodied sex appeal in the early 1930s, her playful smirk and daring gowns making her the dream of Depression-era audiences. Yet behind the glitz was a woman whose private life was steeped in scandal, rumors, and tragedy that only seemed to fuel her fame. Harlow's story began with rebellion. At just 16, she eloped with a much older man, Charles McGrew, an act that stunned her conservative Kansas City upbringing. The marriage collapsed quickly, but it set the tone for the rest of her life. Impulsive, passionate, and destined for headlines. By 1930, she had already posed nude in photographs that circulated quietly through Hollywood. A scandal that might have ruined another actress but only heightened Harlow's allure. The most shocking moment came in 1932. Her second husband, MGM producer Paul Byrne, was found dead in their home with a gunshot wound to the head. The official ruling was suicide, but Hollywood buzzed with darker whispers. Some claimed Harlow knew more than she admitted. Others suggested Byrne's death was tied to secret affairs or hidden perversions. Reporters swarmed, audiences gossiped, and rather than destroying her, the scandal launched Harlow into superstardom. MGM, desperate to protect its investment, shielded her from blame and used the publicity to cement her image as the irresistible, dangerous blonde. Her career soared. Films like Red Dust and Dinner at 8 made her one of the highest-paid stars in Hollywood. But her personal life remained a storm. She endured more failed marriages, affairs with co-stars, and constant scrutiny from the press. Behind the glamour, she suffered from fragile health and a dependency on alcohol, which she used to mask the pressure of being America's most desired woman. In 1937, at only 26, Harlow collapsed on set and never recovered. Kidney failure claimed her life, cutting short a career that had already reshaped Hollywood. To the public, she remained the platinum blonde, a woman whose deadly secrets and untimely death only magnified her myth. Number 17. Linda Darnell, the beauty who burned out in flames. She was called the girl with the perfect face, a brunette beauty whose delicate features and sultry eyes made her one of the most sought-after actresses of the 1940s. Linda Darnell was the dream of 20th Century Fox, a star who seemed destined for greatness, but beneath the polished image was a life filled with betrayal, financial ruin, and a tragic end as fiery as the roles she once played. Darnell's rise was meteoric. Signed by Fox at just 15, she was thrust into adulthood by a studio eager to mold her into their next sensation. On screen, she was luminous. Off-screen, she became entangled in the dangerous world of powerful men. She was linked to billionaire Howard Hughes, whose interest in her was less about love than possession. Rumors swirled that she also courted influential producers, trading affection for opportunities in a system that demanded actresses pay for success with more than just talent. But Hollywood's promises proved fleeting. By the 1950s, her career faltered. Roles dried up, and those same powerful men who once courted her moved on to younger faces. Darnell, accustomed to luxury, was left financially devastated. Her business manager embezzled her fortune, leaving her nearly penniless. The betrayal drove her deeper into despair, and she turned increasingly to alcohol to numb the pain. Her beauty, once her greatest weapon, began to fade. Casting directors stopped calling. Tabloids reported on her failed marriages and broken affairs, painting her as another fallen star. By the early 1960s, Linda Darnell was living more in memory than in reality, a woman haunted by what might have been. The end came in April 1965, in the most hauntingly symbolic way possible. Staying at a friend's home in Illinois, Darnell fell asleep on a couch with a lit cigarette. A fire erupted, engulfing the house in flames. She suffered fatal burns, dying at just 41 years old. Number 18. Diana Dors, Britain's blonde who filmed the scandals. Herself, across the Atlantic, Britain had its own answer to Marilyn Monroe, and her name was Diana Dors. With her platinum hair, voluptuous figure, and cheeky smile, she was marketed as the English Marilyn. But Diana had something even Hollywood's most scandalous blondes didn't. She turned her private life into public spectacle, blurring the line between starlet and tabloid obsession. Dors rose to fame in the 1950s, becoming Britain's youngest registered film extra, before landing roles that showcased her daring sexuality. She quickly earned a reputation as a provocateur, posing for risque photos, flaunting her curves, and embracing notoriety rather than shying away from it. But it was her life off-screen that cemented her legend. Unlike the carefully controlled scandals of Hollywood, Diana's were unrestrained. She hosted lavish parties in her sprawling home, where champagne flowed, inhibitions vanished, and the powerful gathered in secrecy. The twist? Many of these encounters were secretly filmed. Rumors circulated that Dors and her husband, Dennis Hamilton, kept reels of film capturing Britain's elite, politicians, businessmen, and celebrities in compromising positions. Whether truth or myth, the stories gave her an aura of dangerous glamour. Her romantic life was just as turbulent. Diana married 3 times, each relationship collapsing under the weight of infidelity, jealousy, and excess. She collected lovers with the same audacity she collected headlines. Her appetite for excitement matched only by her willingness to court controversy. The press delighted in labeling her Britain's bad girl, while audiences couldn't look away. By the 1960s and 70s, her star power dimmed, but Diana never abandoned the spotlight. She made television appearances, gave candid interviews about her wild youth, and leaned into her image as a woman who had lived life with no apologies. Yet the glamour was tinged with sadness. Health problems and financial struggles haunted her final years. Hollywood's was built on secrets, passions, and heartbreaks that shaped its brightest stars. Which story struck you most? Share your thoughts below. And if you cherish these untold tales, remember to like, subscribe, and join us for more journeys into cinema's hidden past.